We're good to go.
All right. Thank you, and welcome. We are so excited and already started the fun.
We did. We've been lapping it up already. They missed it all.
That's right. So we're here with Steve Miller, one of our mayoral candidates, and I'm Stephenie Smith. I'll be serving as your host this evening, and we want to keep this nice and fluid and really intimate conversation. And so we'll look to you all to help shape this discussion. Please like us, love us, and then also make sure that you share your questions for Mr. Miller. And so we'll go ahead. But I want to give you the stage so that you can really kind of introduce yourself, talk about why are you running for mayor, and what do you expect to accomplish on behalf of Black women voters?
Yeah, okay. So, I'm a lifelong Kansas Citian. I was the oldest of 9 children, and my mother's still 86 years old and living, and I have, she has 30 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, and I'm the oldest of those children, so that's always been a fun thing for me. And I'm married to my wife, Susan, for 28 years now, and I have 2 daughters, Maddie, who's 24 and lives in Chicago, and Lucy's 22 and will be leaving college and heading to New York. So I like to say that, you know, one of the reasons for running for mayor is I want to make certain that Kansas City is a place that my daughters want to return to. It's a place of opportunity and diversity and things to do. And so, like every father, I want my daughters to return here and raise their grandchildren right next door to me.
That's good.
Yeah. So, but you know, I've been blessed in life too. You know, I think the mayor is such a special position, and it has so much potential for the city to do. And I've been somebody that's been blessed to have every advantage. I had great education. I had a chance to start my own business. I run my own law firm. But during all those 35 years of practicing as a lawyer, I've also been deeply engaged in our community. You know, I've worked through Christmas in October 35 years ago with my father to help start that, and has had an opportunity over those 35 years. We've improved over 9,000 homes on the east side of the city for those, you know, for elderly and disabled, help keep people in their homes. So I already had a passion for affordable housing and keeping people in their homes. I had a chance to work at the Don Bosco Centers. I had worked with displaced people. I helped to settle immigrants and refugees, worked with elderly and youth. So I already had a passion for protecting the most vulnerable in our society. My father started the Cristo Rey program, and I was right there with him, and I continue to serve on the advisory board. As you know, that's a school that for African and American and Latino students, from all of whom are well below the poverty line, an opportunity for them to get great education. So I've always had a passion about education. And then 20 years ago, my wife Susan, when our daughters were just 2 and 3 years old, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, given little chance to survive. And that gave me a feeling of what it's like to feel that you're on the margins. That is, that every day is a life and death struggle. And it made me realize that in different ways, so many people in our community, whether, you know, it's loss of a job or loss of a home or drug addiction or violence or criminalization of some fashion, people feel like they're living on the edge, and I've never forgot that experience. And so when I kind of combined the opportunities I've had in life with kind of my passions of working for, you know, marginalized and vulnerable people, the mayor's job was a natural. And then Kansas City had kind of called me forth and asked me if I would serve our state, and they put my name up to Governor Nixon, who appointed me to the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission that governs MoDOT. And I served 2 terms as the chair of that, which functions much like the mayor. And I had a 6-person commission instead of a 12-person council. But I had a chance to govern at the highest level an organization that's bigger than Kansas City by a lot, more than $1 billion bigger budget, with more land ownership, more infrastructure. And I saw the possibility of what great public leadership can do. And I thought, you know, my hometown, the opportunity to lead the city as mayor at this critical juncture in history, you know, I couldn't sit on the sidelines. So many of my friends, you know, they're starting to slow down. They're starting to do other things. They're starting to enjoy the good life. But for me, the good life is being engaged in the life of this community and leading it, and I have a lot to offer, and I hope Kansas City can see that, and I hope they like me mayor.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons why it is important for us to really take advantage of this opportunity to talk about Kansas City and the betterment of it with the lens of Black women in mind is because Shirley Kitchen Cabinet, who is actually putting on our conversation with the candidates, is really committed to being a voice of advocacy for Black women's issues. And so it is important for you. I want to give you a chance to expound on specifically what would some of those issues that you believe that really address or affect women of color, in particular African Americans. What do you see some of those issues as, and then what are you prepared to do to address some of those?
Well, it's one of these big issues is access to opportunity. So I'll embarrass her, but I've seen, my political director who's here tonight, Stephenie Moore, is an African American woman of supreme talent and very accomplished. And I know her story, and I watched her build a great business. And when I brought her here, she came here, and I brought her here, and we looked, coming from Oklahoma City, and really she is, she's the best. And I see the potential for women when they're given a chance, and Stephenie's a great example of that. But I've also, I've met so many talented people, men and women, Black and white, running for the mayor's office, but particularly the African American women, and there's some that I'll just never forget that stick out in my mind. So I'll mention a few names at the risk of embarrassing them. But Carol Taylor, who founds and runs Clean Slate over at the Mohart Center, has become a dear friend. Yeah, Carol, if you're out there, I've seen what she's done to create a company from nothing, and and to employ a lot of people. I love her spirit. I love her ingenuity. And so I look at somebody like that and I say, wow, how can we unleash this for other women? And what can I do to be smarter about that? I don't have all the answers. I learn every day from being with Stephenie. I try to be smarter about those things. I learn from getting to know people like Carol Taylor. I'll give you another example, just the people that again jump out at me. This is in the not-for-profit realm. Mama Hakima at Uzazi Village. Somebody that had a master's degree in nursing and was teaching, and she left it all behind to start this not-for-profit that was focused on health issues for African American women. I can't tell you how much I learned from her. I did not appreciate kind of the implicit racism in healthcare delivery. It was stunning to me to find out from her that an African American woman is 3 times more likely to have a cesarean section, along with the increased risk, hospitalization that goes along with it. And the question is why?
Unnecessarily,
right. And those statistics don't lie. They knock you upside the head and say, why is that happening? So for me, running for mayor has just opened all these windows for me of engaging with people I might not otherwise have met. And in particular, it has been African American women that have really helped to open my eyes and better understand the realities they live every day. And as mayor, I'm going to continue that journey. And it'll be with all the people in Kansas City, but in particular, I think with African American women, because I've seen both the obstacles and the potential.
Well, we appreciate, especially those experiences, and I think, when you're given the honor of sitting in that seat and then leveraging that seat, not to just hear the stories, but to then be activated to do something about it. And so you kind of already talked about this, Steve, but so we know that Black women are the fastest growing group of small business owners and have high workforce participation. But you talked about about the access to capital and government projects and senior level leadership is hard to come by. And so what can you commit to in order to ensure that minority, and which my preferred terms is women of color, in particular African American, but women-owned businesses have access to the projects and encourage job growth?
So here's something that you probably wouldn't know. I mean, there's a lot of experiences in my life. But one is that for the last 20 plus years, I have been working with the city of Kansas City, actually. Sometimes I've actually taken them to court when I disagree with them. Okay. But I've been working through their MBE and WBE programs. So you're familiar with that. So minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, and it's intended to provide opportunities for minorities and for women to have access to opportunities in construction work that had historically been denied them. And so I have had the opportunity to help them go through certification, to help them sort out issues, and somebody like Carol Taylor, help on those related issues. So I've already been doing that before I was ever mayor, and I see the problems within the system where it doesn't work very well sometimes for women of color, and I also see the opportunity. I'll bring a level of expertise and understanding about those city programs that no other candidate, even those sitting currently on the commission, don't have nearly the depth of understanding of some of those programs like the MBE and WBE that I have. And as mayor, I'm going to continue to make certain that we have those programs, but also I know the shortcomings. We need to do a better job of advancing those for women. And then you talked about the access to capital. Yeah. There's some things, particularly when we're going to talk about construction here a little bit. One of the challenges that when you run a construction company is that you're often having to pay for everything in advance. You got to pay your workers, you got to pay your materials, etc., and then you wait to be paid.
That's right.
And sometimes the general contractor's not very good about paying you fast enough.
That's right. Or
the city doesn't pay you fast enough, and now you've paid out all this money, and it creates a crisis in your business. So I think there are things that we can do, simple things, like making certain that we have more quicker payment. Rather than 30 days, let's do it in 2 weeks. Let's be conscious, of how difficult it is to run these businesses and how little changes like that that really don't change the economics of the overall system can really make it easier for someone that's trying to get ahead.
So, I think that's a really thoughtful approach to it. And so when we think about, you talked about some of the areas that, like crime and housing and other disparities, health inequities that happen. Yeah. And in many cases, we talked about this earlier in the evening, but in many cases, or in most cases, race really is the dividing factor. Right. Okay. Not necessarily social economics, but really race. And so you talked about the MBE and WMBE as an initiative that can really help do that. But can you talk about any other initiatives either that have already happened or that you would really support to really help improve racial equity in Kansas City?
Yeah. So one of the things that I have said consistently, and it's really been born out of my experience in the city and being in this campaign, is that I would create an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. And the purpose of that office is to view everything through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so right now, we say it, but nobody's really charged with making certain that everything we do is viewed through that lens. And so, each department is supposed to be doing that kind of on their own. I think that needs to be elevated because I use the example of my encounter with Mama Hakima. She provided that lens for me that I didn't have to understand the inequity and the implicit racism in healthcare delivery because she was focused on that. She educated me. So the job, quite frankly, of this office of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to be that lens for the city to point out to us things like implicit racism that's producing a different result, like in my example of Mama Hakima, because we can't fix it if we can't first see it and know it, right? So I think one of the major jobs of the mayor is to put a spotlight for our whole community on particular issues, because by spotlighting it, then we can call everybody together to say, that isn't right, that needs to be fixed. And so that's what I would do in City Hall, and not just with giving responsibility to look throughout city government, but looking in the city as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and so where can we be better? It's become really obvious to me, because we've been so intentional about talking to so many people, that, we've dissolved a lot of the laws that segregated this community.
Yeah.
But the consequences and the effect of that continue, and they are deeply ingrained. And the other thing is, really, really, really good people don't understand how their view of the world has been shaped. Absolutely. And sometimes we need those kind of voices to help say, oh yeah, like Mama Hakima did for me.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna really remind our friends that are watching. First of all, thank you for tuning in. Please type it in, let us know, and what we're doing is we'll take that and we'll create and share it with Steve here so that he can answer your questions directly.
Okay.
So please chime in, and we'll definitely make that connection. So you gave a shout out to Stephenie, and she's been able to help lead and guide your campaign.
Right.
Can you talk about if you are honored with this role of mayor, what will you do to ensure that Black women have a place? We talk about a seat at the table.
Right.
To have a place in decision making in your administration.
Yeah. Well, you just got to be very intentional, and you have to make a point of it. And the campaign's a perfect example. I hired Stephenie because she was the best person, but I have found the fact that she's had an experience as an African American woman has really enriched my understanding, and I see the importance of being able to surround my people, not with my office, surround the mayor's office, not with people just like me. I'll be a better mayor if I have people that have those different life experiences. Mm-hmm. And that means those people that have different gender, different race, different religious views, different sexual orientation. Yeah. As a mayor, you need to have that 360-degree perspective on our city. Yeah. And you can't have it if you don't have people around you that can bring that.
Okay, well, we have a question.
But by the way, you guys all have to recruit Stephenie to stay here in Kansas City.
I know. Man, shout out to Stephenie. I feel like you need a seat
right here.
So we have a question.
Okay.
And so thank you. Keep these coming. So how will, the office across city departments to address is this say mosquitoes? What does it say?
Inequities.
Inequities.
Okay. Wow. I was going to say, if this is a mosquito quiz, I'm in trouble.
I said, maybe the mosquitoes are out here.
Dang.
That is not, that is more about me and my eyes and fingers and toes than about the question. So to address the inequities with local government, so how will your office work across city departments to address the inequities with local government? So talk about that.
Yeah, so that's exactly why you would create this office that I just talked about, because you would want them to be empowered to look across all the departments in the city, right? Because the departments in the city are much like our city itself, is that people are in their own little silos, and there may be inconsistencies across that. You need one consistent person that's charged with looking across all those departments. Right. That's how you do it.
And the viewer goes on to write that over 50% of city employees live in the lowest life expectancy zip codes. Can you talk about, and that kind of goes into equity across the city and making Kansas City a great place to live in all areas of Kansas City. But can you talk about that and even speak about city employees and this viewer's response of 50% living in the low life expectancy zip codes?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have to make certain that we're paying a fair wage to everyone. But the bottom line is, in some sad way, those zip codes that now have the lowest life expectancy, the highest murder rates, there's so much opportunity in essence, particularly for somebody that works at the city, because they're close. They should have, if they don't, they need to have good access to public transportation. Right. We've gotten in this situation where people leave farther and farther away, which makes it more and more difficult to get to the job. So the question for me is that we have to understand why we have that lower life expectancy. Okay, certainly violence in the community has to play out, but so does access to health care, access to healthy lifestyles, access to good food and nutrition, access to recreation, all those things that make us healthy human beings. And we got to say, how can we as a city do a much better job of creating that quality of life that everybody deserves?
Yeah, and I'd be curious how your chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer can really also address what the absence of racism could do for life expectancies as well.
Yeah.
So, we talked about, the viewer asked about zip codes. So let's talk about community and how you plan to preserve communities east of truth in a climate that really supports developers and dollars. And so, what must the city do to continue economic development? And just kind of talk about your overall view and how that would be under your leadership.
Yeah, so it's important to strike the right balance because we do want development or redevelopment and reinvestment in those neighborhoods that have been neglected. But we also have to make certain that we're not displacing the people that have been there in the neighborhood. So it really is that balancing test. Now, how do we achieve that?
Yeah.
We achieve it by making certain that when we're doing development, it's just not developers coming in and doing it without being in dialogue with the neighborhoods. And so I think it's making certain you have all the stakeholders around the table, and the city and the mayor can lead this is good policy, right? Because most of these developments, they require something going through City Hall, even if it's not in some form of a tax incentive of some kind. They may need zoning assistance, they need to do variance or something. So City Hall does have something to say. And I think that City Hall can facilitate to make certain that every time we're doing one of these developments, we're talking in a bigger picture, not just about this one development, but what is the impact on the neighborhood? What's it going to mean long term? And that we're hearing the people in the neighborhood so that we strike the right balance. We don't want to shut off development altogether, right? Because that's something, my goodness, for 20 years, there was none. Yeah, so now we have some. But now maybe the pendulum has swung too far, where, now we need to bring it back into line. And I think we do that by making certain we have everybody around the table.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the key is how do you manage that? How do you lead it from a lens and a commitment to equity? So that there can be room. So, we talk about...
if I could on that, I'll give you a little bit more on that in terms of, one of the things that, and again, we talked about the importance of kind of distinguishing yourself from the other candidates. The one thing that I have said, now some of the other candidates start to talk about it, is what's the plan that's guiding our city to make certain that we are being attentive to gentrification, to make certain we're being attentive to affordable housing? There isn't one. Right? What business doesn't have a plan? What city doesn't have a plan? When I say that, there is still one on the books, but it's over 22 years old. It's called the Focus Plan back from 1997. Well, back in 1997, your iPhone is right next to you today. Android. Smartphone. Okay, we'll just call it smartphone. Okay. Your smartphone was 10 years in the future. Think how that has changed, how the world functions and how a city has to function. And back in 1997, there was no Sprint Center, there was no streetcar, there was no power and light, there was no crossroads. So, the city has grown and changed. We need a new plan. And the reason I say this is important, because that plan has to make certain that we're building an equitable city, okay? And a fair city. And that's what plans ought to do. So when we're talking about, that's where the city communicates to developers. Look, this is what we want to have in this neighborhood. And this is, we want to have mixed income levels. We want to have, affordable and market rate housing. And this is what we're willing to do with policies. Because somebody, in fairness, we do need the business community, but we need to send clear messages to them what's important to our city. Right? We can't just leave it up to the marketplace. And I think if we put clear policies and rules, then we get the right balance of development. The other thing is, with a plan, we're saying to all those folks that feel left out sometimes, you're part of it. And this is your city too. And this is how it's all going to fit together. And this is how we're going to rebuild this city together. Well, we don't have that.
Right.
We're like walking through the world with blindfold on.
So you really can speak to, and thank you to our viewers. Keep the questions coming, although we're winding down. And so Steve, we're going to go into rapid fire.
Okay, all right.
Don't tell me that your eyes can read that from here.
No, they definitely can't.
Oh, okay.
Now,
So
now,
allow me to do so.
Yeah, particularly without my glasses on, they definitely not reading that.
Allow me to do so. And you kind of just spoke to this.
Yeah.
But the viewer is asking, how do you intend to create and promote inclusive prosperity that reaches ethnic groups across the metro and not just in your administration? So can you expound on that?
You mean beyond the 8 years or 4 years that I might have as mayor? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean beyond the city of Kansas City, Missouri?
Well, you earlier, and I would imagine that earlier I asked about what would it look like within your administration.
Yeah.
So talk about how that inclusive prosperity would reach various ethnic groups. So what are some initiatives or plans or ideas that you have that can ensure that that prosperity reaches, that inclusive prosperity?
Right, yeah. So, prosperity comes from having meaningful work that pays a fair wage. And the key is that, we know that we are in historically low unemployment in the country and in Kansas City. But we have zip codes and neighborhoods in Kansas City where we're 15 to 18%.
Okay.
So we've got to be a lot more thoughtful to figure out why is that happening and what can we do to get people into meaningful jobs. And that means that we are creating clear pathways through the education system to get people into those meaningful jobs. And I tell people, I've been blessed to have, a college education.
Yeah.
I have an advanced degree as a lawyer. I actually have an advanced degree in ministry. But that is, but I can't be a carpenter for the world, and I can't fix my plumbing, and there are a lot of things I can't do. We have to realize that we need to be better about realizing the human talents of everyone, and that there are great jobs out there. We don't define somebody by their degrees behind their name.
Yeah.
We define them by their goodness, by their work ethic, by using their talents and gifts. And so that means that we're working to get that person that would be a great carpenter or plumber or electrician. Or, our junior colleges are tremendously underutilized. They're kind of the SWAT team for job preparation. They're the ones that can prepare you for like an EMT job, emergency medical technician, or for computer coding, or for nursing. And we've got to be a lot more thoughtful about saying we have opportunities in the city. We need a mayor that's going to help point the direction for that.
Well, we appreciate that, and I know the good news is that people of color, in particular African Americans, span that economic opportunity and engagement. So whether there are the much needed trades, all the way to executive leadership.
Absolutely.
That people of color, in particular African Americans, are all across that spectrum.
Absolutely.
So it's really great to be recognized that. We are really closing out our time. That went pretty fast, didn't it?
Man,
that was a quick time.
Does this mean it's happy hour now?
Hey, wasn't it already?
Oh, was this happy hour?
That's right. This is the happiest 30 minutes of your hour of the day.
Okay, let's bring a new definition to happy hour.
We are happy here, and we're really happy that you were able to join us.
Thank you.
Today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please remember to tune in tomorrow. We'll have another great. This is a big group of mayoral.
But now, is anybody going to have as much fun? Are you going to have as much fun as everybody? Come on.
We have to tune in to see, won't we?
Oh yeah, that's right. Let's ask the viewers if any group had more fun than we
Let's
did.
vote on this.
Yeah.
No, but we really thank you guys, and we encourage you, lock it in on your calendar, April 2nd.
Absolutely.
Make sure you are there to vote. We really appreciate you, Steve. Thank you
It's
for
great to be with you.
all the work that you have done, and then thank you for being someone who is interested in doing something better.
Yep, we can do it. We can.
That's really
We
true.
can do it.
So tune in. Thank you to all of those that have supported this. Thank you to our leaders within Shirley's Kitchen Cabinet for creating this opportunity. And be sure to join us tomorrow night. We'll start at 6:30 for our next Convos with the Candidate. We'll have 3rd District Councilman Quentin Lucas. and 5th District Councilwoman Alicia Kennedy. And so we're really excited about that. And people, you can already get a jump start on your questions. So Steve, we thank you and we wish you well.
Great.
And April 2nd, everyone get out there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right. Bye-bye. Good job.